Welcome back to the Mountain Morning Show. Well, it's summer, or at least it's nearly summer, let's just say that. And as that is the case, people like to go out and travel. The good news is, at least this year, it appears that it won't be very expensive to do it because gas prices remain fairly low. They're not the lowest they've been, but they're really close.
Well, I think a lot of people, that's sort of the balance of, am I going to buy the airfare to go somewhere far? Is it worth road tripping? What is it going to be cost comparatively? And you had an interview talking just about gas prices.
Indeed, I did. And it's a complicated subject. There's so much to think about, especially if you start adding into it the mix of taxes and how those work. And they're super complicated. In fact, in the state of Utah last year, the legislature didn't even get it right. They set a tax back in 2015 that was supposed to go in place in 2016. And then the gas price never reached the threshold for the tax to take place. So then they were scrambling to figure out, what are we going to do for infrastructure? We've got to change the tax method. And then they switched it all up for this year.
Well, and you covered all of this in the interview.
Indeed, I did. Let's take a look.
Joe. Hello.
Morning, Joe.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm well. How are you doing?
Just great. So is this Marty?
Yes, I am.
Okay, terrific. So, yeah, I'm excited to talk to you. We got somebody there to roll and record. Where are you at? Tell me a little bit where you're standing.
In Washington, D.C.
Okay, you're in Washington. Okay. Are you outside on a road, or where are you at? Are you in an office? What's your setting?
I'm at the National Press Club. We're in a broadcast with you.
Oh, nice. Okay, terrific. Okay.
Yeah. We're in the studio.
All right, excellent. Well, yeah, whenever you guys are ready, let's do it.
And we're ready whenever you are.
Okay, sounds good. I'll introduce you here. Hang on just a second. So. Well, I'm very excited to be talking to Marty Durbin, who is the Executive Vice President and Chief Strategy Officer for API. And Marty, first of all, tell us what API is.
API is the American Petroleum Institute. So we're a national trade association that represent every segment of the oil and natural gas industry.
Well, that's apropos as we move into spring to start talking about gasoline, because plenty of Americans are going to put a lot of it into their tanks to get out and travel hither and yon in America as vacation season gets underway.
Exactly. In fact, AAA is projecting that this weekend alone, we're going to have more than 39 million Americans hitting the road.
Yeah, this is, as I understand it, record-setting. I think they said since, 1995, this many people on the road?
That's right.
That's amazing. What do you think is causing that increase in people traveling by vehicle?
Well, I can tell you, certainly one of the reasons for it is that consumers are enjoying low prices for fuels. We've now got we're in a time where the United States is the world's largest producer of oil and natural gas and the largest refiner as well, and that's allowed us on a global basis, to help mitigate prices of crude oil, and of course that's the biggest piece of the cost of a gallon of gasoline. So the American consumer is benefiting because of that.
Is there a point of diminishing returns here where we start producing so much that OPEC and some of these other nations start to cut back on their production to where the prices start to come back up?
Well, Joe, the fact is OPEC has already tried to do that. In fact, right now they have curtailed costs, and I would say in the hopes that they might see less production here in the United States. I think producers in the United States have shown themselves to be incredibly resilient and incredibly effective and efficient. We've now seen technology advances that have allowed us to reduce the cost of getting oil out of the ground in the first place, and our refineries all around the country, state-of-the-art. I mean, world-class refineries that are operating incredibly efficiently, producing the cleanest fuels we've ever had.
Well, one other question I think a lot of people wonder is, how are we doing with supply? Have we got enough to really last out our kids, our grandkids? How much do we have?
Well, that's the other great news, is that we're no one is talking about the idea that we're going to run out of oil or natural gas. Because of technology advances here in the United States, we now know we've got more than 75 years worth of crude oil reserves and 143 years of natural gas, and that's using today's technology. We know every time we go out and we explore in new places and technology comes along, we find even more. So I don't think there's any question that we've got the oil and gas resources here in this country for as long as we're going to need them.
Wow, that's exciting news. I don't think a lot of people understand that, and it's certainly worth discussing, I think. But I think the part that I'm excited about most is what people are going to do with it. Where are they going to go, and what are the plans? As far as travel, we expect that they're going to be on American roads a lot this summer. Do we have the infrastructure? Do we have kind of the infrastructure now for that, or are we improving our roads? Is that another part of this as well?
It is something we've got to make sure that our infrastructure continues to be improved. We all have our experiences with the roads that we're traveling on all the time, but I think we've also got to make sure that in order to take advantage of this, the fact that we are the world's largest producer and refiner of oil and natural gas, we're going to need more infrastructure like pipelines and rail and marine, what have you. We've got estimates. A study shows that the private sector is ready to invest $1.1 trillion in energy-related infrastructure. That's a huge win for the country, both to take advantage of the resource itself, but think of the jobs that are created in building that infrastructure. So that it will create more than 1 million jobs to build that infrastructure. And again, that's private sector dollars. That's not taxpayer money.
Yeah, exactly, and it makes good sense because we're expecting to travel, 284 miles on average one way for a summer trip this year.
Right.
Wow, that really says something. What can we do also on our own to make sure that we're being efficient with our use of those natural resources?
Well, that's a great question. As far as those who are hitting the road this summer, a couple of things you want to keep in mind to make sure you're getting the most out of a gallon of gasoline. First, if you are taking a trip, plan it out. Know your route. Combine trips if you can. But again, for those longer trips, plan out the route. Secondly, make sure you've gotten your car into the into the shop for a tune-up. We want to make sure it's operating efficiently. You can add a mile or two per gallon just by doing that. Third, and most simply, keep your tires inflated properly. Those three things alone will do a lot to make sure that all of us are getting the most out of a gallon of gasoline.
Absolutely. It brings up some other questions I kind of wanted to ask about too. The difference in price between seasons. Is this strictly a matter of usage, or is there really such a thing as a summer mix and a winter mix of gas?
No, there absolutely is. So you're right. There is the use does go up during the summer, but there are also requirements, what they call summer blend gasoline, and that's additives that have to go into the gasoline to ensure that it keeps emissions down during the hot summer months. So that does tend to add a couple of cents to the price of a gallon of gasoline. But again, you think about the price of gasoline, the biggest piece of that is coming from the price of crude oil. Then you've got refining and transportation, and you can't forget the federal and state taxes that add on average almost 50 cents per gallon.
That is my next question for you, because I know you guys are very concerned about this, especially when it comes to the people who are selling the gas to us, those gas stations, because they have such a thin margin. Taxes are a big deal, and the way the tax is assessed can make a big difference.
Indeed. Right now it is a use fee, and from an API standpoint, we support the idea of having a use fee but the level is something you've got to be careful about. At what point are you are you now harming consumers in what you put onto the price of gasoline? I think the good news is that consumers are benefiting from very low fuel prices now, and we expect that to continue for quite a long time.
Our concern here in Utah, especially during our last legislative session, was that the way that tax was going to be put upon gas when they did it 2 years ago didn't work. They never actually hit the threshold of cost per gallon to raise the tax. And the whole point for them was, well, we should raise taxes while the prices are low. And then what we found out was, well, no, when the price goes up, the tax will be assessed more, which really meant that as soon as we start turning a corner where gas prices rise and it's difficult for people, that's when we're going to add the most tax. So they came back and looked at that assessment again, and you guys were really strong on, with lobbying to make sure that doesn't happen, to make sure that we do it when it makes the most sense.
Yeah. Another thing that people need to understand as well is that the fuels we're using today are cleaner and more efficient than they've ever been. In fact, combine cleaner fuels with modern equipment and energy efficient vehicles, we've seen air pollutants have decreased 70% since 1970, and that's at a time when our vehicle miles traveled have increased by 174%. So again, when you get to the issue of taxes, we're not using as much gasoline per per car.
Oh, that's right, and I know that makes everybody feel a lot better for sure, and it makes your pocketbook feel a lot better as well.
Absolutely.
Well, Marty, I want to thank you so very much. Coming to us from our nation's capital with the American Petroleum Institute, Marty Durbin. Thank you so very much.
Joe, happy to be here.